We are going to start with a prayer. And we will pray. I'm praying. Dear Lord, we want to thank you for this present moment that you've gathered us again to come in oneness and in the spirit of wanting to know more. We want to ask that, Lord, you may prepare our hearts and our minds so that, Lord, everything that is going to be presented may find a special place in our hearts. Help us to internalize everything. And Lord, may you be with us, Lord, as we mostly always experience network issues. We pray that this presentation may continue swiftly without any disturbances. Thank you for leading us to that far. We pray and ask all this in Jesus' name, amen. So our topic this afternoon is a continuation of the first study. It's actually one and the same things, part one and part two. Part one is the one that we started with in the morning, and then now we are tackling part two. And then I'm going to, as usual, start asking a question so that we may see and hear if everyone at least picked up something from our previous presentation. Who remembers anything that we touched in the morning? Briefly, whatever you can remember. We mentioned a lot of things. At least if someone can remember something, it would be very good to hear that. And I want someone who didn't comment in the morning. I want a different answer from a different person. The twin, because of time, I will have to pick up someone. The twin, Chabalmu, were you there in the morning? Please, just anything, my dear. Okay, I'm going to try somebody else. I'm going to go for Nombuso. Nombuso, please tell us.
Hello,
Yes. I just heard a voice. Is that Nombuso or is it somebody else? Hello, I heard a voice.
Yes.
You may continue.
We're not.
Yes, we are listening.
I'm saying we could not join in the morning because we did not have power.
Oh, okay, I excuse you. Thank you very much. I will not begin this study without an answer of the summary of the first presentation. So I'm looking for someone who is just going to give me just one thing that they pick up from this morning's presentation. Alexis, were you there in the morning? Can you just tell us what you picked up in the morning? Okay, if she's still thinking, I'll go for, I don't know if it's Sepo or Julia who's online, Sepo or Julia. But first of all, I'll go for Sepo. if he's available. If he's not there, Julia can take it. Just anything that you can remember. You don't have to summarize anything. Just tell us what you picked
up. Good afternoon. From the morning, I picked we talk about the complexity, and then you touched about Anna. Is it okay? Let me talk about triple application, where we gave different examples of triple application. The first one, it was of First War plus Second War is equals to Third War. And then the other one was World War I plus World War II is equals to World War III. And then the specific one I think you were looking for, it was the one for the sin of slavery and the sin of Sabbath, which is 1850 and 1888 is equals to 144, which is in our time is gender. Yeah, I think I can comment up to there.
Thank you very, very much. This is exactly what we touched on. Thank you for giving us that answer. Do we have anyone else who don't want to be left out, who remembers anything? Anyone else? Oh, okay. I will not waste so much time because our time is limited already. I'm left with almost 30 minutes. So, but anyway, we did touch on the issue of the advancement of light, and we made a compare and contrast of the two stories that were given externally and internally, which is the story of an atom, how it develops from its simple understanding to its broader complex understanding. And in connection to it was the internal subject, which gave us the history of our message from 1989 under Jeff Kipinja, how we viewed Sunday law connected with how we later, after 25 years, understood as this light was developed in another perspective. And then we ended up covering the three groups, which is the priestly by the Nathanims, how they were developed, and we identified that they came from the history of Babylon, not from the history of Rome, because the history of Rome is where we built our structure. So now we are going to continue with our part 2. So in our part 2, we are going to make use of Ellen White's quotation, because this is where we are able to construct our reform line that gives us the history of modern Israel, the alpha history of modern Israel. So we remember that we, as Tepo commented, we spoke about the second coming of Christ, where Christ was supposed to come for the second time during the Millerite history. And then we noticed that there were actually 3 particular histories where Christ was supposed to come. And then in connection also with the reform line that took us from Jeff to the Sunday law, that when we ended, we said that we had more light that was opened, that was going to give us what was going to take place in USA. So we wanted to know more concerning everything that was going to transpire during that history. So it is going to be actually reviewed and broken down in this presentation. So now we're going to start by looking and reading about the history of USA. I'm going to send this to the group in case those who want to follow with us may follow, as I'm going to be extracting some of the ideas from this quotation by Mrs. White. So it starts by saying, what a nation of the New World Order was rising into power what nation of the New World Order was rising into power, giving us promise of strength and greatness and attracting the attention of the world. So it is actually giving us a brief history of a nation. It hasn't given us what that nation is. So it just tells us that this nation was rising into power in 1798, and we all know that in 1798, there was a nation that actually arose. And then as we are eager to find out what that nation is, if we go down, we're not gonna read word by word because of time. Maybe just where there is a full stop is going to point to us that this meets the specifications of this prophecy. It points unmistakably to the United States of America. So what we want to find out actually is how the fulfillment of the Sunday law that I mentioned was going to take place. The fulfillment of the second coming, there were some steps that they went through before the second coming. So we want to talk about that fulfillment of prophecy that gives us a history of USA in 1798. So actually, now we have a hint about this country that was rising into power, that it was actually USA, this nation, this powerful, great nation. So in 1798, USA rises as a very powerful nation with great strength and greatness, which attracted the attention of the whole world. So next, we are told that this nation, if you go down deeper, was to, this coming up literally signified, if you go down maybe in the middle, was to signify the growth of USA. And this growth was literally explained as the growth of a plant. So as you all know that the plant does not grow instantly and becomes a plant overnight. It has to go through various stages of development. So this is actually what it is trying to tell us about this development of the growth of USA. So another point that we are going to learn, I'm going to send a second quotation that is going to give us another description. So okay, I thought someone was going to say they didn't receive the quotation. So it means I was either reading alone or someone was reading, maybe they opened it privately on their own. But I didn't realize that my data was closed. So I'm very sorry about that. As I'm sending the second one, we are going to go together. So I'm hoping that everyone has received it. If we all received it, it is going to be very interesting that we follow up together. Yes, it's in. So as we continue, it says, and you know, there's this part that I'm looking for before we go to the second one, where it says the beast. First of all, we're given this phrase, nation. Secondly, USA. Now we have been given the beast. So USA now is being described as a beast coming out of the earth. And we don't want to go and describe what the coming out of the earth means. What we want to see now is to continue understanding USA, and we're going to jump to our next oh, thank you very much. We are reading, those that are checking in the group, is already there, but those that want to know, it's great controversy. We first started with 440.2, where we explained how USA developed from how USA rose up to be a mighty nation in 1798, and we had just mentioned two things, that USA is also symbolized as a beast in this quotation 440.2. So, but this we read it in the next one, 441. 441.2, 441.1, 441.1. So we just now absorbed another description of USA, as I have just mentioned, that it is symbolized as a beast. So now we are going to read our second quotation at the beginning there, where it says, and he had two horns like a lamb. He had two horns like a lamb. So it is actually, before I go there, I'm going to actually give a description about a lamb. I'm going to just briefly ask, what can you tell me about a lamb in your own thoughts? When you say someone is as quiet, or not as quiet, I don't want to give you an answer. Someone is like a lamb. What are we actually saying about that someone?
Can I try?
Yes, this one. Yes, who's that?
It means the person
Who's giving me
is
the answer?
gentle.
Oh,
Yes.
Shani. Thank you, Shani. Go ahead.
It means that the person is gentle or calm. Yeah.
Yeah, your thoughts are welcome. Yes, gentle and calm. You don't have to meet the specific. Tacho says gentle again and meek. Yes, thank you for the answer. So you're looking at someone who's very, very nice. You're not expecting, let me not go that far. You're just looking at someone who's approachable, someone who's very nice. Yeah, something like that. So now, as we are reading, it says, and he had two horns like a lamb. So now we already know what a lamb means. So this is actually a parable, because now it's defining USA and what he had. So USA as a nation, the beast had two horns like a lamb. And we want to see what we are given as a description of the two horns. And what it says is that, as I read further, the lamb-like horns indicate youth, innocence, gentleness. So they indicate these horns, the lamb-like horns. They indicate three things: one, youth; two, innocence; and three, gentleness. So this is a very, very good description, and it also matches the answers that you've just given. And furthermore, it continues to say, in 1798, among the Christian exiles, the Christian movement that lived to be in the top 60 history, as you all know, fled to America and sought asylum from royal oppression and priestly intolerance. So we've got this Christian movement. We've got a description of this Christian movement that fled from America because of two issues: royal oppression and priestly intolerance. Thank you very much, Tato, for that answer. Oh, yeah, thank you for bringing that, because we only defined the lamb and we ended there. So So now, considering the answer that Tato gave us, I want to highlight that what we have been given about the beast is not what Tato has said about the aggressiveness, but we are told that the beast was not aggressive. But this is, if I may just paint a little picture on what Tato has said and give it something else, so that it does not confuse what we have in our lesson. Yes, we all know that a beast is aggressive, but in our description, it says that this beast has got lamb-like horns. So these lamb-like horns are what? A description of this beast in a parable form. So it is actually giving it a what? A sweeter a beautiful description, because we've already broken down the characteristics of what? Of a lamb. So this is a combination of, just to maybe mix with what Tato has said, beast and lamb-like horns. So it's a combination of an aggressive beast and a lamb-like horn, but this is actually, like, if I may bring another saying, a wolf in sheep's clothing. So what do you see when you see a wolf in sheep's clothing? Do you see a wolf, or do you see a sheep in that parable? Please answer me, somebody. When you say a wolf in sheep's clothing,
You see
what
a
will you be
sheep.
seeing? Yes, thank you. So here is a beast named like horns. What are you seeing? Are you seeing a beast or a lamb?
A lamb.
Thank you. So as we move on now, we're just touching on the history of 1260, where this Christian movement experienced persecution under the government that ruled during that time, and they suffered priestly intolerance and royal oppression. And then it continues to say, these people were now determined to establish their own government based on civil and religious liberty. So what we see is that from this new nation, yes, thank you very much. You are right. But we don't want at the moment to dwell there. It's going to maybe take us further where we do not want to go. So let us leave it like this for now. So now, USA rises into power in 1798, and as it rises into power, when we look at USA, because we spoke about looking at someone who is a beast, but in them like horns. When we are looking at USA, we are seeing two lamb-like horns. This is actually the description of USA. So as we are seeing these lamb-like horns, it is actually what these Christian nations, when they came to USA, were actually acquiring. They were looking for peace. They were looking for rest. They were looking for refuge from this previous oppression that they experienced in the Dark Ages. So when they came here, they did not want to have, they did not be a country that resembled these emblems. So what they wanted, we ended up by saying they wanted a country that was going to be full of, to be resembling these concepts or this foundation, which is liberty, and then also religious liberty as well. So which is why they are the ones who established these two horns. So as they established these two horns, they were made up of this youth, innocence, and gentleness, because they were actually in form of a lamb-like description, if I may say. They were actually what they were looking for when they established USA. So USA was established in these characters, to say. And then as we go on, it says the Constitution that the Constitution guarantees the people the right of self-government, providing representatives elected by the popular vote shall enact, administer the laws, and freedom of religious faith was also granted. So now what they do is, when they form their government, they establish a paperwork, if I may say, or a motto, but they do this in form of a constitution, and Declaration of Independence, and then the Bill of Rights to accompany their belief that stated that they were indeed a lamb-like one nation, and with this, what they wanted to be stated by this constitution, as you read it, was that it stated that it was giving them freedom, religious freedom, and also it was allowing them their right to enact a government that they wanted to select themselves. And then they wanted to have the pursuit of happy life. They wanted to have liberty, to be who they wanted, and they also wanted happiness. So if you have all this, at the end of the day, you have a happy life. So this is why USA, why they fled from oppression into this newly found nation, which is USA, and then they founded them on this on this concept. So we are going to continue reading. So it says these principles are the at the end, beneath there, the last paragraph. It says, no, before we go there, it says republicanism and Protestantism became the fundamental principles. So now republicanism and Protestantism were the fundamental principles. Who remembers the meaning of republican and the meaning of Protestantism? Because these were developed in our past histories. What did it mean to be Republic and to be Protestant, or if I may say, what do we understand, or what was the issue behind? Anyone who remembers can take us there, or you can just pick one. Okay, for the sake of time, Republic is similar to freedom, if I may say. So Republic was giving people freedom and liberty of life, and then Protestantism was giving them religious freedom. And then these were the two principles that also became the fundamental principles of the nation. And these were actually the secret. If you go down there, it says it was actually the secret and power. It was the secret of his power and prosperity. So it was the secret of his power. It was going to keep them a powerful nation, and it was going to prosper them as a nation. Like they maintained it. And then as we move along, we are going to read our next quotation. Our next quotation, I'm going to send it to the group again. Now we are going to be introduced to another subject. It says, but the beast with lamb-like horns spake as a dragon. So here we have nation USA beast, but now we have another name for you, another name that is saying dragon, because this beast, we identified it as USA. So USA now has got another name, not another name. We have got another parable that is defining USA. So now, Tato, you can answer me when you when you are a lamb and speak as a dragon, there's something that you wrote on the Zoom. What did you say?
What did I write? I know.
Yeah, you can refer back to what you wrote there.
Actually, well, I was just saying that it's when you, my thoughts were actually on where it comes from and what it was to be. And it did not leave what it was, what it used to be, like it not leave what it was supposed to be. Instead, we see the very same characters that were
Thank you.
within the when I was writing that. So you compare, you look
Thank
at the
you.
page, what it was supposed. So thank you.
Thank you. So now, before we have already developed the concepts of the lamb-like beast, how it is supposed to behave in the manner of a lamb. But now we are introduced to another light that it spake as a dragon. So now we are hearing a dragon voice. But here we're introduced to lamb-like horns. So as Tato is saying, now we are coming across a contradiction. So there are some changes now to behavioral changes from this nation. And then what it says, it actually gives us a brief description of how he's going to exercise his power of the first beast. And then he's going to cause all those worshipping, or is going to cause all men that dwell on earth to worship the first beast whose death wound was healed. And we know that in that history of the 1260, this king that participated in initiating this oppression and intolerance received a deadly wound and was no more. But now this spirit is revived again and is healed. Again, we are now seeing it for the second time. So USA is now participating in the what? In the power of the first beast. He is also doing what? Initiating these two things. What? To the people living in this nation, royal oppression, priestly intolerance, but it's coming in another form. But now it is now reintroduced again by this nation that started lamb-like. But to our surprise, this nation contradicted itself and started to speak as a what? As a dragon. So now this is a very serious problem that is facing USA as a nation. Now we are going to read further and find out more. So now we are going to read GC 442.1. Just at the beginning there, it says the lamb-like horns and dragon voice of the symbol point to a striking contradiction between the profession and the practice of the nation that's represented. So now we have got a very serious problem of this nation contradicting itself in that there's a profession there, it appears lamb-like, it professes to be lamb-like because of what? Because of this description and because of what? Of these principles. But at the same time, when it actually voices out, what comes out, when it actually practices and voices out, we see something different. Practice, what we see is dragon voice. And what do you expect to hear from a dragon compared to a lamb? Comparing to these attributes that I've just listed here.
So, Pesci,
Thick and fast. Yes.
so going back to the parable that you said about the sheep, the sheep, a wolf in a sheep's skin. It's now like it's a dragon in a sheep's skin, because it
Not a
prophet
dragon.
it
Yeah.
actually
Yes, continue.
yeah, like the way it looks like it's like it's a dragon, but it has a sheep skin. It actually behaves opposite to what it is inside. But when it begins to speak, that's when you get to realize, okay, oh man, this is not really a sheep, but this is actually a dragon.
Yes, you have put it correctly. It is a lamb in dragon's voice. So while people are thinking that they are seeing a lamb that is professing these attributes, it is not that actually that nation is now professing. It's actually something else when you consider its practices. You don't see all this. These are the foundations that you have to see there in the lamb, like what? Profession. Because this is what they were professing to be, all this. But now you don't see it when they practice. You see something else opposite to all this. What do you see? You see USA taking away freedom, taking away religious freedom, taking away liberty, taking away happiness, all of this. And you start to see oppression, you start to see the spirit of oppression, the spirit of intolerance. So this is actually a bad spirit compared to this spirit that brought them into existence. So they are contradicting themselves. It becomes a problem now. Are we together? Thank you very much. And as we continue now, we can see that when you profess something, it means that you actually stand for those things that are the foundation of your profession. You profess all this separation of church and state. If I was USA, freedom, religious freedom, all men are equal, such descriptions, because this was all also in the Constitution. You have to profess all this in your practice. But in actual fact, in the issue of practice, we actually get to see that there's a resistance that actually boils down to the oppression and intolerance. All this is actually flashed out. And then now we want to move on and see on the history of USA how all this was developed. So now we want to go back to, there's this what we call the Athlete newspaper that came out during that history. This Athlete newspaper stated that because of all this, what USA was actually doing, it was actually copying or actually extracting or bringing again this model of the 1260 back to this new nation, the USA, that developed actually in a very, very good description that we've just mentioned. So now what they were doing, these evangelical Protestants, they were playing a very dangerous game of drawing USA back to that 1260 history. And now we are going to talk about Trump Trump, during his time period, at about the history of 2014, we see Trump and his administrative. I'm sure you remember the 7 Mountain Theology that was introduced in another study that we did during this series. So Trump comes into existence with this 7 Mountain Theology. And we remember this 7 Mountain Theology, what it was all about. It was all about family, religion, and then there was entertainment, there was media, there was also others like government, business. Yeah, there are 7 actually. And so you've got family, religion, entertainment, media, government, business, and then there's also one of them that is
Politics.
come again.
I was saying
Education.
politics.
Education. I think politics is the umbrella.
Yes,
For all
it's, yes, it's education, sorry.
Yes. So anyway, let's continue because we're not going to touch everything. And then now, as Trump did that, what he actually did was that Trump employed or had the same mindset with these evangelists, the Protestants. So what they did is that their mindset was that it is actually God that had appointed them to operate, given the mandate to operate in this mountain, in these 7 mountains of 7, these 7 mountains, through this theology that they believed that it was a mandate that they received from God to actually lead in these 7 mountains. Yeah. So, and you know that in this theory, it was based on wrong understanding of actually reading and viewing American history. So it was built on wrong understanding. So now, this was actually, if you know the history of all this, where they took it from, it actually gives us this contradiction or this discrepancy of profession and practice, because what they professed versus what they wanted to initiate, or what they wanted to, how they wanted to run the government of USA was going to give, was going to like reveal or was going to uphold 2 different perspectives. And it was going to be a contradiction and a discrepancy of these 2 issues of profession and practice. So, can I ask a question? Do you think by doing this, they were going to be upholding the Constitution? Yes or no? Okay, it's a no, because the Constitution was based on all this. So these people actually, you know, yes, thank you, Tato. They were going to take out what? They were going to revive the spirit of what? Of church and state. Because what they wanted to do was force well, what they were going to do was like place God in the name of God, or place God or religion in all these in all these mountains. So because religion was going to be part and parcel of these mountains. So it was going to actually contradict the constitution. So now we are going to further look at the horns plus the dragon as a nation. So these horns and the dragon as a nation, now they were in contradiction with what? With the fundamental beliefs of USA. And now this was branding USA to be another form of a nation that was different from what it was before. And then we are going to jump over and read. First of all, we are going to read another quotation. So we are going to read okay. I'm sending another quotation there in the group. So it's saying the first part we have already touched about the contradicting elements of profession and practice. So it says the speaking of the nation as we continue there. So we are introduced to this new concept of the speaking of the nation. So USA is going to speak as a nation while it is professing these two elements. And then the speaking of a nation is in the action of its legislative and judicial authorities. So now we are given two elements or two branches, which is the legislation and the judicial. So under the legislation part, we know that it is to, this is the first, this is the second, but we all know that USA comprises of three branches. I've actually started with the two branches. So we know that the legislation part, it has to do with Congress. And then the Congress is broken down into two departments, the Department of the Senate, and then the House of Representatives. Yeah. And then the judicial part is all about judges. And then the highest level of this is the Supreme Court. It's the Supreme Court. So under the practice of USA, or under this principle of the speaking of a nation, as we have just read there, it is actually represented that it is the action of the legislative and the judicial authorities. And what is the role of this? We all know that the role of the Congress is to draft laws or create laws, and then the role of the judicial, it is to interpret and enact those laws. So as you can see, the common denominator there is law. So everything is all about laws here in these two branches. Laws that are first drafted, and then when it is passed to the Supreme Court, the laws are enacted. And then we know that we have the third part, which is the executive. And this one is to do with presidents. It deals with the presidents. So now, it continues to say, The speaking of the nation is the action of the legislative and judicial authorities. By such action, it will give the lie. Okay, we don't want to go there. We'll go there later. Now, what you want to look at is we have already explained the roles of these three branches. We want to look at this voice, this speaking. We want to look at this speaking of the dragon voice versus the three branches. So, considering this lamb-like voice that they profess to be, now we are going to view how this dragon voice is going to be a great impact in these two branches. Because when we go to the history of 2014, which is a very, very huge turning point in our history and in that dispensation, in the sense that there were so many things that took place in that dispensation. So it was actually a huge turning point for USA. So what we see is that we are introduced to Obama as a president in 2014. And when Obama is introduced, we hear about the Obamacare Act. And the Obamacare Act was actually a free, affordable care act that was brought by Obama. And then we all remember that 2014, we're expecting a huge event that was Sunday Law. So 2014, we were expecting a very huge event that was Sunday Law. So what we did was that a whole lot of people went and concentrated and placed their focus on this branch, which is the executive. So what is the executive busy doing? Is just busy promoting the free Obamacare Act. So if you were in that dispensation and you're focusing on, we are focusing on Obama, you are focusing on the wrong side, because now the speaking of the nation was not going to come through the executive branch. It was going to come through what? Through these two branches, because we've just read that the speaking of a nation is actually coming from the what? From these two branches, legislation and the judicial. So while people were focusing on Obama, Sunday Law was busy fulfilled through these two branches, which is the what? The branch of the legislation and the judicial, because this was where the dragon was actually busy voicing out. So people lost sight of the Sunday Law in 2014. So in connection to that, we have got another key event in 2014 that we want to understand. But before we go there, we want to understand that it is very important to understand the Sunday Law based on these two branches, because for a Sunday Law to come into effect, it has to pass through what? Through these branches, because it can happen while Obama is sitting in the White House. So Obama has got no powers on what? On the Sunday Law, because it has to be developed through these two branches. So it can happen outside the powers of Obama. And then, yeah, this is what I wanted to highlight. So 2014 is all about the what? 2014 Sunday Law is all about the legislative and the judicial. So focusing on Obama would be a very, very huge mistake. So now we want to go over to another focus during the period of 2014, which is the introduction of Mitch McConnell. Mitch McConnell also came and produced a very huge turning point to USA, because what he did is that he blocked Obama from positioning judges in this branch. So it was a very, very huge initiative that he did during this period. And it was a very, very big danger that USA was facing. So Obama, because of the action of Mitch McConnell, when he was supposed to appoint judges, this mission actually failed. And then we've got 3 men that also played a very big role in this period that occurred in 2014. We've got Stephen Miller, we've got Jeff Sessions, and we've got their leader, who is Steve Bannon. So what these 3 men did is that they paged the centrist Republican Party, and they actually washed them away, first of all, and then what they did as well, they paged them, and which they paged, after paging, they replaced them with their own with their own party of the evangelical Protestants that were church and state extremists. So this was a very, very huge turning point. It means that all of that team was going to be comprised of very church and state extremists. So what this did was that this paging of the Republican Party movement actually gave a huge turning point, added to the problem that was already here, because what it did is actually it prepared, or it empowered, first of all, these 2 branches to be very effective in their method of bringing the Sunday law. Point number 1. Point number 2, what it did was that it prepared the way for another president that was going to arrive in this time period, President Trump. So President Trump, when all this was cleared, it actually gave him a clear path to come. And we spoke about the 7 mountains administrative of Trump. He came and positioned, because remember they had just finished blocking Obama from positioning his judges. So in 2016, when Trump came into this history, in 2016, after Obama period, when Trump came, what he did in 2016 is that he took over from the foundation that had already been prepared by these 3 men, Stephen Miller, Jeff Sessions, and Steve Bannon. Also, in connection with also what Mitch McConnell had already done. So we see that both these 2 things that they had done prepared a way for Obama to come and finish where they started. Remember, Mitch McConnell, what he did is he blocked up Obama, and these ones, what they did is that they actually cleared out the previous officers who were Republicans, and then they replaced them with what? With their new conservative leaders who were church and state extremists. It was an extremist religious movement. So when Trump came into effect in 2016, what he did is that it was just an easy way, an easy job for him And what he did is he appointed his conservative judges here under this branch. And those judges were judges that had a very, very dangerous and preconceived mindset that was based on conspiracy theories and church and state mindset to operate here in this branch. So this was a very, very huge turning point that sealed USA for the next 50 years. This stated that anyone who was going to come and be a president in the United States from this point onwards, because of what had already been done by Mitch McConnell, these three men, and Trump, was actually a damage that was going to take years to be reversed. And whoever came into effect as a president from that period onwards was going to just remain and continue with what already had been laid there, the foundation that had already been laid there. So this was going to take more than 50 years to undo. So, which means the executive branch, there was nothing that they were going to do in order to reverse all this. It was a done deal. So looking at this now, we see that the executive branch also has a bigger role to play in all this. Besides that, it doesn't have powers in enacting all those laws, but he has a very big role to play. So, and you can see that for the nation of USA to be a lamb-like horse and a dragon horse to hold and uphold these two positions was actually a plan that they initiated. Because let me bring this out. When you have a president that comes and only practices this strictly, do we have this issue of indiscrepancy or contradiction? Do we have that? Will we have that? We won't have that. Eh? We are just going to have the straight initiative of a Sunday law that is designed only on what? On the dragon tactics, but not only on what? On the profession practice. And everyone is going to see that, you know what? This voice is not our USA that we founded. This voice is something else. And we are going to also read our last part where it says 442 that I posted on the group, the second paragraph. By such action, it will give the lie to those liberal and peaceful principles which it has put forth as the foundation of the policy. So this is by such action of professing to uphold the Constitution, of professing to uphold the principles, of professing to have the lamb-like character, because this represented the character of USA. This was actually a lie, because they were not really upholding this. They were actually what they were actually doing was they were professing the dragon voice. So it was actually a lie. This was actually a big lie. So they had to lie so that they can mislead people. So people were going to continue standing with them, not actually noticing that, you know what, you are befriending your enemy, which is not your true friend. Your enemy is just behind you to kill you. So be careful. So like, this is what they were initiating, to actually mislead. And they were actually misled. during this period, and all this was designed. So this takes us almost to the end of our presentation. And then we want to see that for you to understand our Sunday law, a Sunday law does not come out of a vacuum. It goes through various stages. So 2014 was the first stage of the first Sunday law that developed. And this first stage was a test for the 144,000. And then we've got another test in 2019. And this test was for the Levites. And then we've got another test in 2021. This was the test for the Nathaniels. Before we come to our final test of Sunday law. Sorry, this was for the priest. Before we come to our final test of the Sunday law, which is going to be the test for what? For the 144,000. So we really need to understand that Sunday law does not come out of a vacuum. It develops progressively in various stages. So, and we also need to understand that for a Sunday law to come into effect, there has to be these two branches. And then also the executive branch has got a role to play in bringing out that Sunday law. So this comes to the end of our study. We're just going to summarize for our thoughts and shrink them together. So this is what we understood, and we actually said. We developed the rising of USA as a lamb-like horn that actually went on to change its clothing from lamb-like horn to dragon voice, contradicting its profession and practice, and meaning that they were actually standing as the wolf in sheep's clothing. And what they were doing was that they were not upholding the principles by producing a dragon voice, and through this practice, what they were doing by contradicting themselves, they were actually showing that they were actually upholding this what? They were like speaking as a dragon, but on the other hand, they were professing to uphold the Constitution, and this was a contradiction. And then they were professing to uphold the Constitution, but at the same time, they were not doing that because of the dragon voice. And then we see how they went on to become a model of 1260 by enacting these three branches, the legislation and the judicial, which were the ones that were responsible for bringing out a Sunday law, because they actually put their own team that they wanted to represent them, which was the conservative team that was going to speak as a dragon in this time period. So we see that this was going to be this was a progressive development that was going to lead us to our actual Sunday law. So this is actually what happened in 1863 in their history. We see all this. There was this form of Sunday law in 1863, and we see that at the end of the day, after this study, there's a group that is going to that group. There's a group or there are groups that are going to be misspent, because if they don't focus on these branches, this is where the Sunday law is going to come out from. They are going to be deceived, because we see the issue of dictatorship that is going to come up through this leader Trump, who is going to come as a dictator, detecting how this judicial branch must operate, and this is going to seal this sealed the history of USA from that history onwards up to ages. So it was going to actually make it impossible for any changes that was going to come, that was going to be considered to be rechanged. They were not going to be possible anymore. So this was a dangerous move that was actually done by who? Mitch McConnell, these three men in the executive branch of USA, and that these were the Sunday laws that we're going to progress until we reach our final Sunday law. So this actually is the end of our presentation. If anyone wants to comment, they may just comment before we utter a prayer. If you want to ask a question, we've got a few minutes before 1:30, maybe, if they want to. But if it was clear, we may close with a prayer. I suggest that we pray. Dear Lord, we'd like to thank you for this light that you have given us, that begin simple and then ended up becoming complex when we start looking at the history of the United States of America, how it developed from being a nation of lamb-like, and then contracted itself to be a nation that is that had a dragon voice, and that also made them to actually transform into the model of the 1260. Thank you so much for that light, that huge light, that complex light. We thank you that you may continue leading us in this truth that is advancing with advancing light. We thank you for all this in Jesus' name, amen.